Good morning, children. Today we are going to take up Unit 5, Surface Chemistry, and this is part 7. So here in the presentation we start with properties of colloids. Now under properties of colloids we have colligative properties, Tyndall effect, color, Brownian motion, charge, electrophoresis, electroosmosis, and coagulation. We start with colligative properties. You all know that colloidal particles are bigger aggregates. So what happens? The number of particles are comparatively less in comparison to a true solution. So the value of colligative properties of colloids are of small order. You know that colligative properties depend upon the number of particles. Now we move on to the next property, that is Tyndall effect. Now you all might have observed that when a beam of light is projected in a cinema hall, it becomes visible due to scattering by the colloidal dust particles in the theater. So that is actually similar to the Tyndall effect shown by colloidal particles. So how to define Tyndall effect? It is the process of scattering of light by colloidal particles. Now you can see here that there is a setup here. You can see here, in this setup you can see the path of light is illuminated or visible in the beaker containing colloidal solution, which is due to scattering. But here in the true solution it is not visible because there is no scattering. Okay, and you have to remember that Tyndall effect was first observed by Faraday and later studied by Tyndall. Now we move on to the next, that is Tyndall cone. It is defined as the bright cone of the illuminated path. Now you can see the bright cone of the illuminated path here. This is the bright cone of the illuminated path, and this bright cone is known as Tyndall cone. This bright cone is known as the Tyndall cone, and you can see the scattering of light here. Okay, so Tyndall cone is the bright cone of the illuminated path. Now we move on to the next, conditions for Tyndall effect. Now before we go to the conditions of Tyndall effect, you have to remember the importance of Tyndall effect. The importance of Tyndall effect is that it confirms the heterogeneous nature of colloidal solutions. And one more fact associated with it is that Zsigmondy used Tyndall effect to set up an apparatus which is known as ultra microscope. Now we move on to the conditions of Tyndall effect. First condition, diameter of the dispersed particle should not be much smaller than the wavelength of light used. And second, refractive indices of dispersed phase and dispersion medium should differ greatly in magnitude. And here we have another picture of Tyndall cone and the scattering of light and the Tyndall cone. Now we move on to the next topic, that is color of colloidal solutions. Now you have to remember that color of a colloidal solution depends on the wavelength of light scattered by dispersed particles. And you have to remember that wavelength of light further depends upon size and nature of the particles. So color depends on wavelength of light scattered, and wavelength of light depends upon size and nature of particles. Another fact, color of colloidal solution also changes with the manner in which the observer receives the light. For example, light focused on a mixture of milk and water, if reflected light is viewed, it is blue, and if transmitted light is viewed, it is red. Another example, finest gold soul is red in color, but as the size of particle increases, it appears purple, then blue, and finally golden in color. And here you can see the samples of gold colloids in different colors. Now we move on to the next topic, that is Brownian moment. Robert Brown observed zigzag movement of pollen grains suspended in water and it is known as Brownian moment. This type of moment is exhibited by colloidal particles also. And how to define it? It is the continuous zigzag motion of colloidal particles. And you have to remember, Brownian moment depends upon the size of colloidal particles and viscosity of the solution, but is independent of nature of the colloid. So you remember, smaller the size of particles, lesser the viscosity, and faster is the Brownian moment. Lesser the size, lesser viscosity, faster Brownian moment. Now, what is the advantage of Brownian moment? You may be asked, what is the advantage of Brownian moment? Now, Brownian moment is useful because it opposes the force of gravity and thus has a stirring effect which does not allow the particles to settle down and gives stability to the colloids. Means it keeps the colloids stable due to the stirring effect. Now here you can see the zigzag movement of the colloidal particles. You can see here, this is the zigzag movement of the colloidal particles. Now the next property is charge. We have already seen in the previous presentation that colloidal particles always carry charge, and nature of charge is same on all the particles of a particular colloidal solution, may be either positive or negative. Now we have to go through the reasons for charge on Soule particles. A few reasons are due to electron capture by Soule particles during electrodispersion of metals, like in Bredik's arc method. Second reason, preferential adsorption of ions from solution, and the third one is due to formulation of electrical double layer. These two we will see in detail. Now before we go into the reasons in detail, we are having some examples of positive Soules and negative Soules. Hydrated metal oxides and metal hydroxides are positive Soules. Metal Soules, metal sulfides are negative Soules. And here we have a table of positively charged Soules and negatively charged Soules. Hemoglobin, a common example of positively charged Soule, and starch, a common example of negatively charged Soule. Now we come to the topic causes of charge. Now we are going to see in detail. First cause of charge is frictional electrification. It is caused by mutual rubbing of colloidal particles with the molecules of dispersion medium due to the movement of colloidal particles in the dispersion medium. This is the first reason for cause of charge. Now we move on to the second reason, and this second reason is applicable only to associated colloids. It says dissociation of surface molecules takes place in soaps where the sodium ions move into the solution while the anions aggregate, which are of colloidal size. Next cause for charge is selective adsorption. Now, the cause of charge is that the dispersed phase adsorbs those ions preferentially. Preferentially means it prefers to adsorb those ions which are common to its own lattice. For example, if we prepare colloidal Soule of AgI by adding Ki solution to AgNO3. Now you have to see here, AgI colloidal Soule is prepared, and here during the preparation what you have to see is that when we can prepare AgI in two ways. When we add AgNO3 to Ki or Ki to AgNO3, we will get AgI precipitate. In both the cases we will get AgI precipitate. But here we are applying a condition. We are adding Ki solution to AgNO3 solution. We are adding Ki solution to AgNO3 solution till Ki is in slight excess. When this happens, adsorption of iodide ions from Ki on the silver iodide precipitate takes place and we get a negatively charged Soule. Now you have to remember here the condition. We are adding Ki into AgNO3 till Ki is in slight excess. Okay. So adding Ki to AgNO3 till Ki is in excess, what is happening? Iodide ions get adsorbed on the surface, and you see iodide ion is the common ion with that of the precipitate. AgI also has I, and here we have I minus. And the counter ion remains in the dispersion medium, and you are getting a negative Sol. Now we move on to the next condition, in which we will be doing the reverse of this. We will add AgNO3 into Ki till AgNO3 is in slight excess. That is, we are going to see. In that case, what happens? Preferential adsorption of Ag plus ions takes place, and the Ag plus ions, when they get preferentially adsorbed, we get a positively charged Sol. So AgI precipitate getting adsorbed by Ag plus ions, and you get a positively charged Sol. You have Ag plus ions getting adsorbed here, okay, and you get a positively charged Sol. So this is reverse of what we have seen earlier. Now here you can see the AgI precipitate is there, and the Ag plus ions get adsorbed on the surface, and the counter ions remains there, and you get a positively charged Sol. Now when we look into this double layer, we can see the first layer, the iodide layer, is the fixed layer, and the potassium layer is a diffused or mobile layer. So you get two layers around the precipitate, okay. Now you can see here also you get two layers. This is the fixed layer, and this is the diffused or the mobile layer, okay. Now we move on to the next term, that is Helmholtz electrical double layer. Now what is Helmholtz electrical double layer? We have the fixed layer which attracts the counter ions from the medium, forming a second layer which is mobile and is called the diffuse layer. This double layer of opposite charges is called as Helmholtz electrical double layer. You have seen the double layer of opposite charges, the fixed layer and the mobile layer or the diffuse layer. This is called as Helmholtz electrical double layer. Another term, the difference of potential exists between the fixed and diffuse layer, which is known as electrokinetic potential or zeta potential. So zeta potential and Helmholtz electrical double layer, hope you have got it. Here also you can see the negative charge adsorbed. This is the fixed layer, this is the diffused layer. Similarly, we have another example when ferric chloride is added to excess of hot water, a positively charged Sol is produced. And if ferric chloride is added to NaOH, a negatively charged Sol is obtained due to adsorption of OH minus ion. Now here very important point to note, the presence of equal and similar charges on colloidal particles is responsible for providing stability to colloidal solutions. This is because repulsive forces between charged particles having same charge prevent them from aggregating, okay. So this gives the stability to colloid. Now next property is electrophoresis. It is the movement of colloidal particles towards opposite electrodes under the influence of electric field. Now when the colloidal particles are moving to opposite electrodes, what does it prove? It proves the existence of positive or negative charges on the colloidal particles. Now in this diagram you can see when electric potential is applied across the platinum electrodes, particle moves towards one or the other electrode. You can see this is before electrophoresis and this is after electrophoresis. After electrophoresis you can see the particles are moving to the opposite electrodes. During electrophoresis, positively charged colloidal particles move towards cathode and negatively charged move towards the anode. So you can see here the migration of colloidal particles to the oppositely charged electrodes. Here you can see the migration and then accumulation here. Now when electrophoresis is prevented, We are preventing electrophoresis by suitable means. At that time, what happens? The dispersion medium begins to move in the electric field. Dispersion medium begins to move in the electric field. This is known as electroosmosis. Now, the next property is actually electroosmosis. It is the phenomenon in which molecules of dispersion medium are allowed to move under the influence of electric field, but colloidal particles are not allowed to move out. So you can see here the setup, semi-permeable membrane is there, dispersion medium is moving, but colloidal particles are stopped from moving. Now we have the next property, coagulation or precipitation. Hope you all remember the definition of peptization. Peptization was the process of converting a precipitate into a colloid. And coagulation is the opposite. We are converting colloid into precipitate. So you should keep in your mind the difference. Coagulation is conversion of colloid into precipitate, and peptization is converting precipitate into a colloid. Okay, and how can we coagulate a colloid? It can be done by removing the charges. So you can see here coagulation of a colloid by removing of charges, and the particles settle down. Now, methods of coagulation of lyophobic sols. There are 5 methods: prolonged electrophoresis, boiling, mutual coagulation, persistent or prolonged dialysis, addition of electrolyte. Now we see each of the methods. First is prolonged electrophoresis. You all know what is electrophoresis. So if colloidal particles move towards oppositely charged electrodes, they will get discharged and are precipitated. The second method, mutual coagulation. If you mix in equal proportion the oppositely charged colloids, they will get neutralized and will be precipitated. Means if the charge is gone, they will precipitate. For example, hydrated ferric oxide, which is positive sol, when mixed with arsenic sulfide, which is a negative sol, it will bring it in the colloid in the precipitated form. The third method is boiling. When we boil a colloid, the adsorbed layer is disturbed and the colloidal particles loses its charge and settle down. So you have to remember, in all these methods what we are doing is we are trying to destroy the charge over the colloid. Then it will settle down. Once charge is gone, all the particles will settle down and form the precipitate. Then next is persistent dialysis or prolonged dialysis. When we do dialysis for a long time, prolonged means long time, then the traces of electrolyte present in the sol are removed completely and colloids become unstable and settle down. Then fifth method is addition of electrolyte. When we add excess of electrolyte, the particles of colloids will take up the oppositely charged ions and get neutralized. Here you have to remember one important definition. The ion responsible for coagulation is called as active ion or a coagulating ion. And you have to remember, a negative ion causes the precipitation of positively charged sol, and a positive ion will cause the precipitation of negatively charged sol. Okay. Now, with this topic, there are few terms associated with it. First is flocculation. When concentration of electrolyte added for coagulation is very low, then it is called as flocculation. Okay. Now, there is a very important rule you should remember, that is Hardy-Schultz rule. This rule states that greater the valency of coagulating ion, more is its power to cause precipitation. We have already taken the definition of coagulating ion. So here you have to remember, greater the valency, more is the power to cause precipitation. Means valency of active ion has a direct relationship with coagulating power. More valency, more coagulating power. Example, you can see arsenic sulfide is a negative sol. So the active ions will be the positive ions or the cations, and you can see aluminium is having the maximum valency, so it has more coagulating power, and sodium ion has least valency, so it has least coagulating power. Similarly, ferric hydroxide is a positive sol, so it will be coagulated by the anions, and the anion with greater charge will be coagulating to the maximum extent, and with the least charge will coagulate it the least. and this is an important topic. Now we have the next one, coagulating value. It is the minimum concentration of an electrolyte in millimoles per liter required to cause precipitation of sol in 2 hours. This is the definition of coagulating value, and you have to remember coagulating value is inverse of coagulating power. Now what does it mean? Like example, Al3 plus aluminum ion has high coagulating power because its coagulating value is low. It means with a small quantity of it, coagulation can be caused. Since its coagulating value is low, so it will have high coagulating power. So it means with very little aluminum ion, coagulation can be done. Now we move to the next topic, methods to coagulate lyophilic sols. There are two factors which are responsible for stability of lyophilic sols. First is charge and second is solvation of colloidal particles. When these two factors are removed, a lyophilic sol can be coagulated. Now, the methods to coagulate lyophilic sols are addition of electrolyte and addition of suitable solvent. Addition of electrolyte we have already seen in lyophobic sols. The explanation holds the same here. And on adding of suitable solvents like acetone, alcohol, etc., dehydration of the dispersed phase occurs. And under this condition, a small quantity of electrolyte can bring about coagulation of lyophilic sols. And the next topic is protection. Now, protection of colloids. You have to remember, lyophilic colloids are more stable because they are extensively solvated. Now, what do you mean by extensively solvated? It means that colloidal particles are covered by a protective covering or sheath of liquid in which they are dispersed. Okay. Now, lyophilic colloids thus have a unique property of protecting the lyophobic colloids by forming a layer around them, and thus they act as protective colloid. Now here you can see lyophobic colloid is there and lyophilic particles are surrounding it and protecting it. Okay, here also the same thing, lyophobic particles are there and the lyophilic particles are acting as protective colloids.